Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, which is brought to you by First Light. I'm your guest host, Tony Peterson, and today I'm joined by my good buddy, Greg Litzinger, to talk about the tree stand fall that nearly took him out of the game forever. All right, folks, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, which is brought to you by First Light. Before I tell you where Mark is, I need to remind everyone that he and I have been putting together a new project called Whitetail EDU. In it, we take a lot of the questions we get asked over and over by our audience and try to break them down in video form. You'll be able to watch the first episodes dropping on the MeatEater Clip YouTube channel any day now. All right, so you figured out, Mark's not here. It's because he's out with an injury to his thumb. I know this because he texted me a picture of his hand with a caption that said, "Hey, bestie, got myself a little ouchie here, so I'm going on vacation for the 7th time this year." I didn't ask him what he did because I knew it just meant that I'd have to do his job for him again. And some might argue, rightly so, I would say, do it quite a bit better than he does. Now, while I actually don't know how he injured his thumb, I did see in the background of that picture a book that said, "Getting Started in Shadow Puppetry." And there's a bunch of scraps of paper and a pair of scissors that look pretty sharp. There were also quite a few tear stains on the paper, so feel free to wish him a speedy recovery on his ouchie. My guest today is a fella you might know of named Greg Litzinger. Greg is a New Jersey bow hunter with a serious reputation for killing good deer on public land. He also had one hell of a tree stand fall some years back, which is what I really wanted to talk to him about today to wrap up this month of episodes dedicated to the different ways the shit might hit the old fan for us whitetail addicts. This is a good one, and it's a great reminder to use the right safety gear the right way. Greg, buddy, how are you?
Happening, man.
So I got to ask you right away here. This has been getting this podcast actually booked and recorded has been a hell of a challenge for me. And how's your old man doing?
He's doing all right. I guess he's going to put him in they're going to put him in a facility to help him work through his injuries there. Originally they were going to do surgery, but they kind of pulled back on that. Going to let the kneecap hopefully heal. They're going to revisit it, I guess, in a week or two and make sure it's healing correctly.
So he's 75, right?
Yeah.
And he's out night fishing for largemouth?
Yeah. Whatever, fighting on the freshwater, like nothing crazy, just crappy largemouth,
So 75 years old, he's out night fishing, and what happens?
Yeah. He's putting his boat. I think he's putting his boat in or out. I haven't really got the full grip, but the boat's at the boat ramp, and you got that angle where it goes down into the water. I'm assuming it's dark out. He had a headlamp on, and I guess he slipped off that little apron, and I'm assuming his right ankle went down. He broke bones in that foot, and he come crashing down on his left knee, shattered his knee, cracked his kneecap, and then in the middle of falling, he, I guess, come down and ended up hitting something in his 2 knuckles. So he's got like this giant bruise on his hand, and like a typical male, he just drives his boat home because he lives on the water, goes up like it's normal, like it's nothing, goes to bed. He wakes up next morning, he can't move. So he calls me. Well, my sister calls me and say, "Hey, Dad fell down. He's in a lot of pain. Do you have any pain meds?" Because, I'm dealing with a wrist injury. I was like, "Oh, what happened?" So I called my dad. He's like, "Yeah." And he sent me a picture of his knee. And I'm like, "Dude, call an ambulance, man. Like, you can't move." His foot's swelled up, his knee's swelled up, and like his bedroom's, it's a single-story house, but his bedroom's like downstairs. So it's like 3 steps, but they're big steps. I'm like, "Dude, call an ambulance. You have to get people to get out of here." So it took like 3 dudes to get my dad out of his bedroom. And we go to the emergency room, and we got there at 8:50 at night. By the time he got admitted to a room, it was 8 o'clock the following night. So I was up with him dealing with, because he's in and out of sleep. They're giving him like pain pills. So he's like out, and then he's like awake. And then he had like a breathing episode because he has emphysema. So it was like a scary moment there. But I was like, the whole time I'm like, man, Dad, you're not 25, dude. Like, you can't be doing this.
So I gotta frame this up. Your 75-year-old dad goes night fishing, falls
Yeah.
off of a dock, working with the boat somehow, whatever,
Yeah.
breaks bones in his foot, breaks his kneecap,
Yeah.
obviously messes up his hand, probably trying to catch himself falling,
Mm-hmm.
does the totally irresponsible thing and goes home and just falls asleep, wakes up in excruciating pain because he's totally busted up.
Yeah.
And then you finally get him in to the ER and it's a 24-hour wait.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the one nurse was like, they haven't seen anything like this. Like we go in and they check you in, they give him a wheelchair and like they have a new ergo friendly wheelchair. It's trash. Like my dad's like decrepit. He's all sitting on this thing. You can't lean it back. You can't put your feet up. So it's like my feet are underneath his feet because he's 6'1", you know? So it's like, this is not designed for big people, you know? So it's like, I have my feet underneath his feet to take pressure off his knees and his foot. So every time he moves, like I'm trying to like hold his feet as we're pushing down the thing. And it's just like, it took 3 hours to get him in a bed. You couldn't x-ray him because I couldn't get him off the bed. They had to wait for people to show up to put the harness, whatever, on him, put him up on the thing for a CAT scan and x-rays. It was just a nightmare, man. Like the waiting room was like standing room only. It was like a concert. And it was like, so we're like sitting in the hallway and the lady's like, you can't be here. I'm like, there's nowhere else to go. What do you want me to do? Like, I've been in that hospital, not for nothing. I've been in the hospital before, emergency room, and it's been like in and out pretty good. So I'm like, we'll go there and be in and out. Wrong. Definitely not in and out.
And so your sister calls you for some help because you're sitting there with a brace on your wrist. Clearly, and we haven't even got to the actual reason we're talking to you here.
Yeah. We're getting tried.
Have you ever done any history on your bloodline? Are you just an injury prone people? What's going on here?
I'm just dumb. Most of my injuries are my own stupidity, like snowboarding, like hitting jumps way too big, jumping off like 50-foot cliffs and stuff, like driving up to like right up to like, yeah, I can do it. I'm from the East Coast, from New Jersey. We don't have 50-foot cliffs.
Right.
I should not be jumping up there, but it's like, well, it's powder. How hard can it hurt? It hurts pretty good, you know?
So what happened to your wrist?
I fell at work, tore a ligament, my SL ligament. If anybody that's medical background, it's a small little ligament on the scaphoid and the lunate, tore that. They did a surgery to put it back together. Had an infection on my hand, had to pull the pins out, and the surgery didn't take. So now I'm in line to get another surgery next month. So
you're bumping up awful close to deer season here, dude.
I'm gonna have to mouth tap it up. I might be ready by end of October.
Oof.
Middle of October. They're gonna fuse a couple bones together on my wrist, so the heal time is gonna be like, I got cut March 25th, and I try and shoot my daughter's little bow, and I could feel that little bit of pressure on my, and it's just a little 10-pound recurve. I'm like, so I'll probably mouth tapping up or
crossbow. I know.
My luck, I'll kill the biggest deer in the world in my life with a crossbow. And I was saying, I'd rather not. I'd rather just.
I know.
If I got to do gun, I'll probably do muzzleloader. Like my dad's got a few Hawkins and stuff. I'd probably go. I got inline muzzleloader, but I've killed a half dozen deer maybe, and there's been no connection with the deer. It was very like, eh. But
isn't that
iron
weird?
Sights, yeah, it's iron sights, maybe 60-yard max by like 200 yards. I just don't know. Personally, I'd take no joy in that. It doesn't. The last deer I killed with a muzzleloader, I was actually angry at the deer because I was like way in the back. Like I dragged this 8-pointer out like by myself at night, and I was like angry at the deer. There was no like, it's still awesome. It's a big, nice 8-pointer, and I just threw the wrap in the woods. So it was like no attachment to deer. I mean, something to butcher shop and everything, but the wrap, I just didn't want no parts of it. It's weird.
I don't.
It's in here, like I sound like an elitist saying that, but it's like for me, like gun hunting, I just don't. It
Yeah.
just doesn't do it for me, man.
Dude, I deal with this with a lot of the people at MeatEater quite a bit where, I mean, there's a lot of gun hunters there and, rifle hunting, especially out west is like a really big thing, obviously, with a lot of these
Yeah,
guys. And I'm like, like, doesn't interest me. I don't know
yeah,
why, and it's when you say you'd go to a mouth tab over a crossbow, it's a hard thing to explain. Like it just
yeah,
is. Like, I mean, like,
yeah,
yeah, you have every reason in the world just to do it. Just,
yeah,
just shoot one. But it's still like you just know, like you get to a certain point where like I know what I want to get out of this, and I
yeah,
know that's not going to give it to me.
yeah. And like I said, my thing with the crossbow is like I didn't exhaust all options. Like there's still things that I can do. Like for me personally, like the crossbow is like I've exhausted this, this, and this. Like if this is all I got to get in the woods, then okay. But I literally gave it everything I had, and then okay, now I've. For me,
Yeah,
it's like if you go right to crossbow, and nothing against crossbow, I know it's going to ruffle some feathers, but it's just not. If I can put up on it's a gun, it's a cross gun, man. Like
yeah,
my buddy's got a Raven, and I can shoot 80 groups like this off a rest, like it's nothing. I'm like, that's
it's just different,
it's
man.
not the same, man. It's not the
No,
same.
no, and it's weird too because if you think like, okay, go out, scout your ass off on public land, find a big deer. He walks by at 20 yards, your plan comes together, and you thump him with a crossbow.
Yeah,
It's not going to be the same thing. It's kind of like go out, somebody goes out and has a target buck, right?
yeah,
And he comes walking through finally, and you've been thinking about this deer for the year or 5 years or whatever, and he's busted off a side.
yeah, yeah,
Like a lot of people aren't going to shoot same deer,
yeah, yeah,
same situation, but it's just like not the same thing.
yeah. I got a spot right over the bridge here in Delaware. A little piece of private my buddy has. I'm allowed to hunt, and there's a really nice deer on it. And it's like my luck, I would go with the crossbow, shoot booter class deer. My biggest one ever will be the crossbow, and I'm like, me personally, I don't know if I could put it on the wall. It would have to be a Euro mount and be like in
Yeah,
the basement or something. There'd just be no. I just that's just my own personal take.
dude, we draw weird lines, man. And
Yeah,
I mean, I was last year. I've talked about this on here a few times. I picked up the muzzleloader for the first time in quite a while, and I went and hunted some of this public land in western Minnesota that I've been pheasant hunting a lot because I'm
yeah,
just kind of falling in love with the cattail sloughs and trying to kill a
yeah,
deer out of there. And I didn't kill one. I had a blast, got close, and I
mm,
was talking to my boss about it. I was just out in Montana, and he's like, "Dude, that sounds so fun." I'm like, "Come on out. I'm going to do it again
yeah,
this year." And then he's really into like precision rifle shooting, the
yeah,
contests, and he's like a long range guy, and he's like, "Oh, we can get these muzzleloaders." I can't remember what he said, but he's like, you can shoot 300-400 yards with those, and instantly, because this country out there is like wide open, right?
yeah,
They're visible. There's enough terrain and brush and stuff where you're getting 300 yards from them is not that hard
yeah,
because you can
yeah,
find them.
yeah,
And like as soon as he said that, I was like, that's too far for me. Like,
yeah,
so in my head, I'm like, I can take that muzzleloader out, have a blast, but I'm like hunting closer in a
yeah,
range that in my head is like, yep, this is what you do, and this will be worth it for you. But as
yeah,
soon as somebody else is like, oh, you can just do this 3 times as far,
yeah,
my brain's like, no. But like, why?
yeah.
I mean, I don't know why it matters, but it just does.
Yeah, it's like PA, they had that flintlock, the
Yep.
muzzleloader. You gotta do that. Like I think that's pretty cool. Like there's they're not exactly 100-yard shooting machines. Like the guys that do it, it requires a little skill, a little effort, like a bow almost. And like
Right.
my dad, he uses the Hawkins, no scopes, anything. I'm like, if I have to gun hunt this year, I'll probably use a Hawkins,
Yep.
open sights. Give me 65 yards, maybe. It's probably a far shot. I basically just be bow hunting
Right.
because I'm going the thickest stuff possible. And it's like a single shot be just it's actually probably harder than bow hunting, really.
Well, I mean, so again, that's what we had here in Minnesota for a long time. It was all open sites. And
Yeah,
so it was like I I ended up muzzleloader hunting like I bow hunt, like,
Yeah.
because most of your shots are within 40 yards.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. It was because you're like, I have like a tiny advantage, right? I guess not
Yeah.
like a tiny advantage, but you definitely have an advantage.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm still playing the kind of game I want where I get them
Yeah.
close. But then you think that would be what you're doing with a crossbow. And for some
Yeah.
reason, it's less appealing.
Yeah. I just like the guys we're at the PA TAC, and I was talking to people I know. You gonna do crossbow? And I'm like, and like I mean, there was a point where I was like, maybe I could do it, but talking to people, it was like, I just can't do it. Yeah, the one guy literally was like, "You'll kill the biggest deer of your life with that, and you'll never kill anything bigger." And it's like, it got me thinking. I'm like, that dude's right, man. Like, I will never. I'll kill Booner, New Jersey, with a crossbow, and be like, it's like I would never live that down. Like from the outside world and me inside, it'd be like the biggest deer I've ever killed. I can't put it on the wall. I'd be ashamed of it
Well,
personally. Like that.
if it makes you feel better, our mutual friend Clint over there at Truth from the Stand, he's
Yeah.
probably going to get a Brazilian jiu-jitsu injury here eventually. So he'll probably be hunting with a crossbow eventually, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah. He's pushing. He thinks he's 20.
I know.
He's like my dad.
Yeah, he's getting after it pretty hard. This is the reason that I wanted to talk to you today is I was looking for somebody who's had a real tree stand fall and a real like somebody who hunting has taken them out of the game. We had
Yeah,
Will Jimeno on, the 9/11
yeah,
survivor. Zach got a kidney transplant. Tim's dealing with his wife who's got who's cancer diagnosis twice. So I was like, those are outside things that took people right out of hunting.
yeah,
And to kind of frame this up at the end, and you had quite an experience, huh?
yeah. Life changing, I guess. To put it lightly, I guess.
So
So
can we start in the hours before the injury?
yeah.
Just put us there, man.
So you can see the deer with the all the stuff on the bottom.
Yep.
That was my first big deer uh, that I ever killed. And the following year, another buck was there. I was watching him all summer. So I went in there and I was going to trim up this tree and get the stand set and all that, do like a whole practice dry run. And it was
What
right before a hurricane.
what time of the year is this?
This is all late August
Okay.
or early August. Yeah, it was right before hunting season. Uh, but hurricane was coming. All my scents can be washed away. So I went in there pretty aggressive because I like getting close to where they sleep. So I never used a harness ever. And that February, I bought like a lineman's belt, and I would use it in the backyard, use it setting stands and all that stuff. I'm like, this is kind of nice. So I go up to that. It was in a mulberry tree. I think it's a mulberry, some type of berry tree, and I got the two hang-on sticks, lone wolf sticks. I got the stand set. I'm like, man, this is great. And I've got like the harness on. I'm leaning back, and I took it off, and I don't even know why I took it off, but pretty much I guess I zigged when I should have zagged and dropped like a rock. And
So did you have a lineman's
I
belt
had,
on?
yeah, I had it on, but I didn't have it on. I had it on me, but I didn't have it on. I was so used to using it and all that stuff, and it's like, and got used to it, got comfortable with it, and then I thought it was on, and and the way I went, and
So
they,
hold on. You thought you had it on. You're just kind of like thinking in your head. You're going through the motions of doing deer
yep,
chores,
yep,
and
because
you kind of
yeah,
just forget.
yep,
So people are going to listen to that and they're going to think that's crazy.
yeah,
But man, I've had just a few experiences where I'm pretty religious about
yeah,
tree stand safety, and I have been for a long time. But I have had times where I've gone out, and this is like they stick in your head because you like this
yeah,
is not how you do it. Where I've climbed up in a tree and realized that I just didn't clip on, harness
yeah,
on, whole thing, and then you get up there and you're like, holy shit. Like I totally, in fact, I saw a video the other day. It was quite a while ago, but there was a crew filming a skydiving video, like back in the 90s sometime. It was a while ago. And so they had to do multiple jumps in the same day. And, camera guys jump out, get ready to film, people doing this, the skydivers jump out. Well, they're filming this guy who had done multiple jumps in one day. And as he's free falling, he reaches back and realizes he never put his parachute on because he's so comfortable. He's already done this, so it's like, that's a professional skydiver making a film who died. I mean, you can see him like realize his mistake in the air. Brutal.
Yeah.
But you think you can't make that mistake, but it's a mistake.
Yeah. I worked on roller coasters, high rise roller coasters, big Ferris wheels. I never harnessed up. I put the harness on, but I climbed trees as a kid. Like I should have been an iron worker. Like I'm not afraid of height. I'm not afraid of doing all that stuff. So climbing trees, I never harnessed up. Even everything I did, one leg around a tree, one arm around a tree, I could throw a hang on and everything on, like no problem. But I used that lineman's belt just a few times. And I got used to it, and a handful of times being there. I'm like, man, this is way easier hanging that stand. So muscle memory kicks in. It's like, oh, it's there. And it wasn't. And I'll tell you one thing. Everybody says they're going to be able to grab a branch by fall. Bullshit.
Yeah.
You fall. Like in my head, I still remember that day. It's like, I'm just going to grab this branch. It's like the branch is right there. You're not grabbing the branch, man. Like you fall and there's nothing you can do about it. And I was very, very lucky. I fell in between like a tree that was all like get hit by lightning or blew over. It was all like kind of like shredded up. And I literally scraped the back of my head. It was like 3 inches one way or another. I probably would have been impaled in the back of my head. And the irony is no one knew where I was because not many people know where I hunt. So it's like, but getting a little ahead of myself here, but.
So and this is like, for me, this is very easy to understand and relate to. You are the kind of person who has no fear of heights. So you're very comfortable up there. But you decide to be safe, use a lineman's belt, and you get used to that. And honestly, like what you said, it's kind of a revelation when you first start using them because you have hands free. I mean, it's just, it's so much easier to work in the tree, safer and everything. But you in your head, because you've just started using this thing, you're like, I can lean back, work on this tree, and you didn't have it on. So you lean back with nothing there.
Yeah. And they said, to this day, I think about that. It's like, what? Why? Like, why? I mean, there is no why. It's just a human error in a rush. Because I wanted to get a bunch of spots done that day for the hurricane. So I was kind of, cutting corners a little bit. Maybe I should have slowed down, but I didn't.
Well, and, dude, it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens. So you're how high were you?
I would say 15.
Yeah.
My feet might have been like 15, around that range. 15 to 17 feet.
Yeah. Pretty average. Yeah.
Nothing crazy,
And you lean back, you fall. Like you said, everybody, I can remember when I first started bow hunting, we had those, they were like a waist safety harness that, went around your waist, and they're built out of like the seatbelt material.
Yeah.
And a big rope like a big lineup with a carabiner on there. And I can remember when I started bow hunting when I was 12, my dad bought each of us those harnesses, which we know now are terrible because you fall and end up upside down and die anyway.
Yeah.
And you just die like slower and in more pain. But I can remember the guys that kind of his hunting buddies at that time were all like, you're wearing a harness? Like, and they said the same thing. Like, oh man, if I fall, I'm just going to be grabbing everything.
Yeah.
And it's like,
unless unless you're, the only thing you might be grabbing is if you're falling into the limb and maybe you get a chance. But if you're like, if you have to reach out, like, I've skydived before. You fall pretty fast.
Yeah.
If there's nothing, if your feet aren't on the ground, like you're moving pretty good.
Yep.
And you better have some, Bruce Lee type reflexes, man. But the average person, that's not happening.
No. And I mean, the other lesson there too, like with your old man and his injury, they say one of the most important things about keeping healthy as you age, get to that age, is grip strength.
Yeah.
Because if you start to fall in the shower, whatever, on the boat landing, like little stupid stuff, if you can't get a hold of something and hold yourself up, or arrest your fall, you're in trouble. But you're never going to do it when you're in a tree. Dude, I'm going to let you keep going here, but I got to tell you this. I had the only time I ever got any kind of injury with a tree stand fall was when I was pulling a stand years ago. That was the last stand in the, late winter, early spring, pulling all my stands on different properties. And that was when we used screw-in steps a lot. And I was up there working on that stand, and both of the steps I was standing on pulled out of the tree at the same time. So I was harnessed in, but I hit my ribs on the seat, kind of the stem. But you think, like, if anybody's listening to this and they're like, oh, you think that you're going to have like anything to react to, like you're going to barrel roll, you're going to do, you have nothing. You are
unless you're like maybe if you're a gymnast and you're used to something like, that, but the average person, no, man, you're pissing in the wind at that point.
Dude, I think the Venn diagram of gymnasts and bow hunters it barely touches. I don't think we got a lot of gymnasts in our ranks.
No, definitely not.
So you fall out. You probably knew you screwed up instantly when you lean back. You hit the bottom there, and you're in a tree that has basically a bunch of wooden daggers sticking up because of the lightning strike. You get lucky there. What's like your first thought when you hit?
Well, when I woke up, I was supposed to meet my buddy for lunch. There was like a time frame. My buddy Kenny, we're going to meet up for lunch. And I remember falling, and like trying to catch that. And I don't know, it was just my brain on replay. But when I came to, meanwhile, like I'm on the edge of water, like I'm close to water. So the place floods out. So if a hurricane is coming, where I am is going to be underwater. So when I come to, I can't move. Can't move my arms. Can't move anything. I'm just in the dirt, breathing real heavy. And, it's just,
how
it still
old
gets
were
me
you here?
sometimes.
How old were you here?
30, 34,
okay,
35. No kids yet. No wife, no kids. It's just me. But I couldn't move. And
did you think you were paralyzed?
Oh yeah. I was like, well, this is it. And I'm like, and I tell you, this is the weird how my brain works. So I lived a pretty cool life, done a lot of cool stuff. It wasn't like I was like regretful that I couldn't move. My biggest at the time was like spiders and snakes. I'm not gonna be able to have spiders gonna crawl on me and snakes. And there's nothing I can do about it. That's all. They're like, I'm gonna drown. I was like, and then spiders and snakes gonna crawl on me. Not that I can't move or anything. I'm like, I didn't say this is how it ends. I'm like, I was like, okay, I can deal with this. But I'm like, I'm gonna drown. A slow, horrible death probably. Or I'm gonna just have anxiety and panic attack because spiders and snakes gonna be all over me. And and then like I don't know how long I was knocked out, or how long I was having these thoughts in my brain. And then, it was like, what was that? Like, I thought something might be like on me, like, but my body started like coming around.
Like you did a hard reset there, buddy.
Exactly what the guy at the hospital said. He goes, your body went into preservation mode when you fell. Going to preserve all internal organs to stay alive. Everything else gets shut down. And I was like, that makes sense. He goes, you hit head pretty good, and then that impact. But I basically shattered, if you can see, I shattered this tibial plateau. Just like my dad's left swollen up knee. I was pretty much in the same boat. But I remember being able to move, and thank goodness my phone was in my bag on the ground. Because if I would have probably had my phone in my pocket and I fell, I might have broke it. And so I was lucky I had the phone in the bag. And I remember crawling to the bag because I couldn't move my legs. My legs still weren't moving. So I'm crawling to the bag, call my buddy Kenny, tell him what happened. And I had to tell him where I was. And it was very painful because he's known to slide in your spots when you're not around.
Classic Kenny.
Yeah. So Kenny and my buddy Tony and my buddy Jerry's an EMT. They brought a deer cart out. Jerry came out, put my neck in a brace. But I remember trying to pull myself up on these trees and letting go and just falling right back down. Like I thought my legs were done. And it took me to the hospital. And I remember being in the hospital in the bed, and I had my good pants on, and they wanted to cut my pants, and I was like, "Don't cut my pants! It's my favorite pants." They were like Dickies. They were like I had them for like 10 years. I was like, I can take them off. Just let me take them off. And they're like, "We'll cut them." I'm like, "Don't cut my pants." I was like, I'm already. And like my legs were working, but weren't working at the time. It was a weird thing. And that hurricane hit. I was in the hospital, for close to 2 weeks.
So we got to back up here. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right. You're glossing over a lot of stuff I want to get into, buddy. First off, let's just acknowledge the power of a phobia. You've fallen out of a tree stand. You're like, I'm now paralyzed. This is your new reality. And two of your three biggest fears at the moment are snakes and spiders crawling on you.
Yeah.
Where you're not in Africa, right? Like you're not in a place where, you might have a spider crawl on you, but it's not going to bite you and kill you. You know,
true.
Like you don't have a lot of snakes out there probably that are going to be like super dangerous to you, but that's the power of a phobia like that. It's like now all of a sudden you can't get away from something that you have this irrational fear of. So even though you're like, well, I just paralyzed myself, you're like, I hope a spider doesn't crawl on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, you don't see like the horror movies where sitting there and like somebody's and like a spider or something's coming across their face. That's all I kept thinking about. And I was like, and why? I have no idea. I pick up spiders and snakes, but that's what I reverted to in that moment. Why? I have no idea. Like, I'm not a fan of spider snakes. I'll pick them up. I get snakes in the house. I'll take them out. I'm a lot better now that I got kids. I should have kids like, oh, spiders are great. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm 50-50s on spiders, But that,
not me.
Yeah, that moment there, that's all I kept thought. Because whereas I hunt there a lot, there's some big wolf-looking type spiders, and it's like I just know what's there. I see black snakes, I see water snakes all the time, and I'm like, oh, God, this is it. Like this is what's going to happen. Or I drown. So I'm like, right. But the drowning was like number 3 on the snakes and spiders. Like the drowning was coming at the bottom, which I don't know why that should have been number 1, but it wasn't.
Dude, it's like I'm sure they've studied this or something, but it's almost like you went back like in time. Like no, it's like like I mean, it's almost like you went back to like our primal roots where you're like, okay, here's the actual dangers I'm facing. It's nature, like wild. Okay. So you get a hold of Spot Stealing Kenny.
Yeah.
And you're like, you got to come get me, but don't take my spot. Like, this is one of my favorite spots close to a bedding area. He ropes in some buddies and they come out with a deer cart.
Yeah.
And
the irony of that.
They have a neck brace for you.
My buddy Jerry's not a hunter. He's an EMT. I called him. Him and his girlfriend came out and they had their bags. Like they're ready to go all the time for disasters. So they came out because he was like, I kept trying to move. It's like, don't move. Just stop trying to move. But I'm a man. I'm like, my arms work. And I'm like, I need to get my legs to move. I'm going to keep pulling myself off on this branch and I just kept falling. And it's like, and they put me on a neck brace. They check all my vitals and they put me on a deer cart. And Tony has a picture of me, neck brace on, getting drug out with a deer cart. And every now and again, he'll be like, I got a picture of you with a deer cart and a neck brace. And I'm like, I'm sure you do, buddy. I'm sure you do.
Were your EMT friend there?
Yeah.
Was he worried about exacerbating this injury, or were they just like, we got to get you out?
You gotta
And
get stabilized, yeah. Because
right,
the had to get me to the road. There's a couple hundred yards to the road where the ambulance was waiting. Because he was like, the people are gonna have a hard time coming back here with the stretcher. They're gonna make it worse. So we'll just. He checked me out and he goes, okay, there's no internal bleeding. Like your vitals are good. Your legs, we'll worry about that at another time. But your main vitals are good. Blood pressure was good. All that stuff. And
man.
then gave the go ahead for the deer cart. And it was like, it was like not only just embarrassing is Kenny is there. I know he likes to talk at the bar and tell people what happened. And like, I'm gonna lose my spot. Tony's taking pictures of me on the deer cart, and it's like, and I call him the favor, like if someone comes out, you get, you know, friends will do anything for you, but there's like certain favors. Like when that happened, like you use certain favors up. So now I'm 0 for 3 right now, So it's like whenever these guys call or whatever, I'm like, I have to drop whatever I'm doing
Right.
and go. So it's like this is stuff I'm thinking, not about like being paralyzed. I can't move my legs. I'm like, man, I owe a lot of people favors. No, I'm not gonna be able to hunt this year. And it's like, I'm on a deer cart, you know what I'm saying? All these things were in my head instead of like what I should have been focused on, and I just bought this house I'm in. I was having all this, I wasn't worried about any of this. I was just worried about owing people favors, which you gotta pay back.
Of course. Do you think you were sort of in? I mean, obviously you're probably in shock, right? Do you think that you kind of just maybe your brain was like not letting you fully grasp the situation, distracting you a little bit, or
I
do you just didn't think it was that bad?
I I take I've talked to, I went to see a therapist, about this because I was not upset that my legs weren't necessarily working. Like it didn't never it, it wasn't important. Maybe because I lived a pretty good aggressive. I kind of did whatever I wanted to do. I got to a point in life where I was like, I did a lot of cool shit, man. Like I'm okay if this is where it is. And he just says people just handle trauma differently. But I never got upset that my legs weren't. I couldn't lift my legs up that whole time. They even like in the hospital after surgery and coming home, I'd be standing up. I would just fall to the ground. Like I couldn't do anything. My legs just stopped working, and they could never figure out why that happened. They don't know. I got scans and all that other stuff, but they could never figure out why signals from my brain. I probably got some type of trauma on the brain, that might come back to bite me when I'm 70.
But they never figured out where the disconnect was there.
No, no, because it's never consistent enough. Like it would happen, and then I'd be good, and I wouldn't have any issues, any problem. So it's like it's hard. I fix things for a living. It's hard to fix something if it's not acting up when you're there. Like,
Right.
hey, this machine's wobbly. You go there and it's fine. You're like, I don't even know where to begin to look.
Right.
Like they did EKGs and all stuff. Everything was fine.
So
So I haven't had any episodes. Uh, Probably 3 months after the injury was probably like the last one.
all right. So your buddies get you out on the deer cart to the ambulance. What's the are you in pain, or are you just going with the flow at that point?
Mixture of both.
Yeah.
Adrenaline, um, maybe like a little bit of fear. Like I said, aware that your feet or legs aren't working very well. You know, yeah, I didn't want to like focus on, like, hey, I can't move. I'm trying to like focus on trying to maintain because I've had a lot of injuries before that, snowboarding and mountain biking. It's like I know like the whole injury game where you can't really change what happened. All you gotta do is just keep looking, what you do have, what you not necessarily what you don't have.
Right. I mean, you can't go back up the tree and
Yeah,
do it over.
no, exactly. And the only time I was really truly in pain, I remember being in the hospital and they tried to straighten my leg for some reason. I don't know. Like they literally tried to straighten the leg that's grenaded. Like I had like a small little piece of bone sticking out on one side of the skin. Like it was completely grenaded. And for some reason, this nurse tried to straighten my leg. And my girlfriend at the time, she said, "You literally arced backwards, and my head was near my ass. Like I went like in the hospital bed, like full like exorcist style." And it was like, and she goes, "You just let out this weird guttural scream, and then it just stopped, and you were like so tense, and the lady stopped, and whoever came in stopped making from doing it because I think they wanted to put a brace on my leg for some reason. I don't know, but I'm like, that's the only like when it really felt like pain. And in that moment, you're like, okay, if I can feel that, I should be good. Because if I
Right.
was like, all these things kind of like connect at weird different times. It's like, all right, I felt that, like really felt that. So I'm good
Uh,
enough. Like my leg will work, maybe
So
not 100%.
so in that moment, you were actually kind of relieved by the pain because in your brain you're like, okay, you don't get
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause they were moving it like nothing. It's like almost numb. Like I could feel people touching me, but I couldn't feel like there was no pain until that lady were really torqued on my leg there. And it was like, all right, cool. I'm I'm a lot better than I thought I was.
All right. So you get in there. Do you think I mean I suppose when you come in like that, they have to assess you for everything and
Yeah.
probably their main concern is your spine and just
Yep.
figuring out what's or your
Yep.
brain, whatever. Figuring that out and then they start assessing you know the injuries that maybe aren't going to kill you like your knee, but are
Yeah.
gonna be a real
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Do
I
they?
got,
So you get in there. They do they keep you conscious like so they can go through your
I
injuries
was,
for yeah
I was in and out.
okay
They're giving me some drugs. I don't know what they were giving me, but whatever it did was, it would just knock me out. I mean, it's put me right out. And then, 'cause I don't remember getting wheeled to surgery, but like this happened during a hurricane. So like there's a massive hurricane going on as I'm in the hospital. So they had an MRI there, I got CAT scan, they did all that stuff. Because I said I had a big scar, like a big thing on the back of my head. They were worried about, they said, the spine and the brain, making sure all that was working. But as far as like the knee injury, I don't remember getting wheeled to surgery or like anything like or being signing papers to get the surgery done. Like it was just like it needed to be done. I was probably out, and you're like, well, he's not gonna he's not gonna know.
right
Yeah, because
so
they said it's during a hurricane. Like no one was allowed there at the hospital after hours. So it's like after 8 p.m. I was on my own, and like my house flooded. We lost power to my house for like 2 days. Like I had friends coming here trying to get my sump pumps working. My basement, I'm getting flooded. It was like it's a whole like
dude they were just racking up the
yeah,
favors huh
yeah, yeah. So
do you know if the spot you fell flooded in that hurricane
it'll flood under a high tide,
oh
like
really
a full moon. Yeah.
so not only so you would have been underwater there eventually if you
Yeah,
couldn't have got a ugh,
yeah, under high tide, I probably be damn close. Really like
right
close. Maybe not drowning, but you know, damn close to it.
right well I mean getting your arms back would have
Yeah,
helped but
yeah.
that would be
If I
a
didn't, yeah, like could hold
right
my chin up there.
right that's like how they used to they used to like shackle somebody in low tide and then let the
Yeah,
tide roll back in and you got
yeah,
to think about that rising water for 6 hours or
yeah,
however long
yeah. That's it's weird. Like I said, I had to go to physical therapy and like uh, see specialists and all that stuff. And the one guy, he was like, "You don't seem bothered by this." I was like, "What does I get bothered by? Well, I can't change what happened. I can't get mad at myself. I can't like regret's one of those like emotions. It's just wasted. You're just regretting what? You don't get yourself angry. And I already had enough issues going on. Uh, So I was just trying to stay as positive as I could, because literally I almost lost his house. So I bought it, in June. This happened in August. So I was like, I pretty much wiped out everything I had, you know, and then like I was out of work for 6 months. Like disability don't pay crap. Anybody that's been disabled for a long time, $400 a week is nothing. I mean, when you're used to making 8 or 9, 400 is nothing,
Right.
So the financial strain was tough, the emotional toll. But I will say one thing that, where is it? What theater is it? That's this one right there. So I went to the doctors and I had brace crutches, and the doctor was like, I kept saying, because I have a time I was competing, so I'm an archery coach. I was meeting with him once or twice a week, shooting my bow. He's getting the arrows. I'm on crutches. I'm shooting. Like hunting kept me in a positive light to get back. But that deer there, the doctor says, I was like, can I go hunt? And he goes, you can try walking with a normal brace, like a Don joint, like a hinge brace, and try to get out and see how that goes. So I was like, awesome. Next morning, I shot him. I had a lone wolf climber. I go, I go all the way back there, and I had to walk like maybe like 300 yards. It's November 7th, I think. I remember get to a tree, I'm exhausted, and with a climber, so my knee's still not good. I'm climbing up a tree, but a climber, I might have got like 10 feet. I was in so much pain. It hurt so bad. I remember sitting down. I was like, I shouldn't even be here. Like, this is a bad idea.
No shit, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And then that guy shows up. I ended up shooting him. I had to call Kenny again because it was middle of the week. He's laid off, and I'm like, I just shot a buck, and I can't get him out of the woods. So he comes out, and he walks on the deer. Deer's not dead, so he has to shoot it again. I thought the deer was but so he has to drag. He drug me out of the woods a few months prior, and then he stuck dragging that deer out of the woods for me. So it was a pretty cool moment there.
Did you were you wearing a safety harness when you killed that buck?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Not a full. Oh,
Man, I was hoping you were going to say yes.
Well, I wore I hate full body harnesses. I always wore the waist belt. That was my thing. So I girth hitched waist belt, and that's what I used. But it was like, oh, it was it was tough. It was cool. I killed that buck. Like the doctor like said, like hunting was the only thing that kept me going therapy hard. Like not taking
Yep.
anything for granted. Like really like pushing hard. And like hunting got me through the darkest part of that. Because it's like, okay, like I'm good. Like, okay, I did this. And then the last year I killed a muzzleloader. I killed him the first day of muzzleloader. A couple days after I killed him, 2 weeks after I killed him, muzzleloader came in and I shot that big 8, nice 8 with the muzzleloader. So I had a pretty good season after what happened.
Dude. So I work in the dog space quite a bit too. Like I love bird dogs and
Yep.
I love dogs. And one of the things that's really interesting about dogs, like sporting dogs, working dogs, is they get a catastrophic injury and they heal up really fast. And I've asked a lot, like crazy shit, right? Like think about a German short hair pointer. You let them out of the truck and they go 1,000 miles an hour over a cattle grate and get their leg stuck in there and twist it, completely the wrong way, the shoulder or whatever, shit like that. Or, eating like catfish bait with a treble hook in it, running away and setting the hook into their esophagus, that kind of shit, right? And I've talked to a bunch of different veterinarians about this, and they're always like, dogs heal up so fast. And I'm always like, why? Like, what's the secret? It's because they don't have a pity party for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Anyway, so when you talk about, this is one of the things about this month of episodes that's really kind of driven home for me is we think about the injury, right? Like you think about how traumatic that injury is, but you don't think about the emotional weight for everybody else around you,
Yeah.
or okay, like you can walk again. That's great. You can, they worked on your knee. Like
Yeah.
you're going to be back out there. You're out killing deer pretty
Yeah.
quickly afterwards,
Yeah.
but you've got a house payment, a brand new house
Yeah.
payment you can't make, and the stress of that. And so when you think about this kind of stuff, it's like you our audience will understand it to some extent when you say deer hunting and the prospect of going deer hunting was a lot for you.
Yeah.
Not only just mentally to like, I got to get back out there. That's the thing that I need to like fill my cup up, but also
Yeah.
just go kick ass at PT
Yeah.
and get better. That kind of thing, instead of just sitting there wallowing in your self pity, changes the
Well,
arc of your recovery.
yeah. I've had a lot of, like I said, before this leg injury, I had countless surgeries. And one thing I found out, it's tough. It's harsh saying it, but people only care so much about your well-being because they have their own lives.
Right.
Like before I had kids, it might be different now because I got a wife and kids. But when I was alone, it's like I spent a lot of, I had meningitis in my early 20s. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, pretty much alone. People's got their lives going on. It's like, yeah, we'll get there tomorrow. We'll get there tomorrow. Like, very few people came and see me. Some friends, some coworkers. My dad was working. It was kind of like, yeah, well, whatever. So, a couple knee surgeries. No one comes to see you. Like, no one really cares. It's like
Right.
that level of caring stops because, well, people have their own lives, their own problems to deal with. So it's like wallow in pity. No one cares.
Right.
I call it the Eeyore mentality. Oh, woe was me. No one cares. Like, I don't want to be around those people. So it's like, why would I behave the same way? So it's like, just accept whatever is happening, and move forward. Like, regret. What are you regretting? The regret's all in the past.
Right.
All you got's here now. Like, move forward. You're busted up. Good. Work through a problem. Work through your problem. And came home. I'm laying in the hospital bed in my house, and just laying there, just hours on alone, just thinking. And it was like, once I got home from the hospital, nobody really checked on me. It's like, my girlfriend was working, and then my girlfriend's dad at the time, like she got sick. She wasn't here. Like, I was literally alone. My buddies, like, they got jobs, kids and stuff like that. So it's like, you have a lot of time to think. It's like, if something bad ever happens to me, like me falling out of a tree, if I would have been paralyzed, I would have screwed everybody's lives up because not only mine, but everyone around me. Because now they got to take care of me. They got to run me here. They got to do this. So it's like you have all these time to think, and it's like I got to mentally get myself right and get out and do things I enjoy.
Yep.
Because sitting in this bed, it's like it's not for me. You could probably cut my legs off. I'm still going out in the woods. I'm gonna find a way to get out in the woods, shoot my bow, and do things that for my own mental state I need to do.
Yep. But I mean, it's so poignant to hear you talk about that. Like I just wrote about this with the situation where, the non-resident resident thing where, residents are like, we got to kick non-residents out so I have better hunting. Like
Yeah.
there's always a reason. We can always find a reason to not be successful,
Yeah.
or we can always find a reason to not have the fun that we think we should or whatever. And I just keep looking at this. I'm like, everybody I know who's a really good whitetail hunter, like you, and we know
Yeah.
lots of the same people who go out and
Yeah.
kind of get it done wherever
Yeah.
they hunt. It's because you accept that you have sole agency over this. Like
Yeah.
it's on you. You might have somebody come in and walk in on your setup at some point. You're going to, right?
Yeah.
Or you're gonna be on plan C for the night because there's trucks parked wherever. That's just like a little part of the game. But you going out and scouting and you like planning those hunts and doing your thing, it's just on you. Like that,
Yeah.
the failure just as much as the success. And so when you talk about this, that's so important to acknowledge. Is like, you're right. Nobody's sitting
Yeah.
there like, oh, they're like, yeah, I feel bad for Greg, but I have to go pay my mortgage. I got
Yeah.
to take care of my kids. He's a tough dude. He'll recover just fine. And you are there responsible for finding that thing that's going to drive you to
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah. And as I've gotten older now with kids, like I still think about that. Like if something ever happens to me if I'm out hunting, like now, like the saddles came about, like big. So like I gravitated towards the saddle pretty much because like the safety aspect of it. Like, okay, I'm from here, there, and down. Like I'm completely, I'm connected. I love that part. It's like there are some times that I'll set like one stick, and I'll climb up, set the other stick, and I'm like, I shouldn't even be 5 feet off the ground.
Nope.
And it's like the lineman's literally like right here on my thing, and it's like, and like I always tell my daughter, because you get in the car, like sometimes I'll forget my safety belt. I always tell Annette, I'm like, yell at me if I forget to put my belt on, because I'm trying to help you. Sometimes I forget,
Right.
and she'll be like, Dad, your belt, safety first. And it's like, so it's like I still forget because I'm strapping her and doing this, and I put it in reverse, and I go, and I'm like, I don't even have my belt on. What's this beeping noise? It's a safety belt. And she'll remind me, I'm like, that safety first. And I'm like, it's still to this day, it's like, come on, man. Like I'm 46 years old and I still cut corners. And it's like, and you run the gauntlet, you take chances with anything. My job, I do some sketchy shit sometimes at work, and you're like, probably shouldn't have done that. Hey, but the job's done. But it's like, come on, man. Like, better.
It's
Like overreaching to get this bolt. You're like, I got this. And it's like, why are you even doing that? Like, come on.
well, and I mean, so my wife is a physical therapist, right? And she worked at a pain clinic for a long time. She's dealt with a lot of people with random injuries,
Yeah.
wild shit, right?
Yeah.
And you always think, like in the hunting space, people are always like, "Oh, have you seen a mountain lion? Have you ever ran into a grizzly, a rattlesnake,
Yeah.
whatever?" And I'm like, it's that's not what's going to get you.
Yeah.
Like you're going to run a broadhead through your thigh doing something
Yeah.
stupid, or you're going to fall out of a tree. And you mentioned even you put up one section of sticks, right? Go to the
Yeah.
next one. So like you said, your feet are maybe 4 to 6 feet off the ground. And you're
Yeah.
like, big deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you fall out of that, my wife has treated patients who've been paralyzed for falling out of hammocks.
Yeah.
I mean, like stuff where you're just like, no way, that's 2 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was at a media event one time years ago, and there was a guy there who had he was 6 feet up doing what we're talking about and fell 6 feet, and he
Mm.
shattered both of his ankles. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking like you said, like a life-changing
Yeah.
injury, not life-threatening, but
Yeah.
your quality of life, the future of your life changes in that moment from a 6-foot fall.
Well,
Just it's crazy.
yeah, like OSHA, they always say like most, like in a workplace, falls over like under 6 feet are someone most fatal. And you're like 6 feet. You're like, it's just a step ladder. It's
Right?
like, but you fall, hit your head. Like I know guys that have bumped their head and get brain bleeds. They don't know, go to bed and don't wake up.
Yep.
Then you're like, guys that go hiking, fall on a trail, hit their head, snowboarders, like skateboarders, all this stuff. And it's like, you never know. Like some people just lucky, some people aren't. There's no rhyme or reason. I don't think it's just,
Yeah.
it's your time. I guess it's your time.
Dude, I've never had like a bad injury in the outdoors, but it is always this stuff, like when I had that fence break on me in Oklahoma and I thought I ripped my nuts off, I'm
Yeah.
crossing a fence.
Yeah.
You're crossing a
Yeah.
fence. I mean, how many times in a year do we cross barbed wire fences?
Yeah.
you know, or I mean, I was cutting up a deer one time. I was pretty young this time, but I was cutting like a leg bone with a saw over like above my head. It was hanging up,
Yeah.
and a piece of bone came out and hit me in the eye, and I rubbed it and scratched right across
Yeah.
my eye. And I mean, just dumb, right? And
Yeah.
it was day one. I had a 5 days off to hunt the rut, and I'd
Yeah.
killed a doe. And the whole time I'm sitting in a tree stand with a scratch in my eye and that, like 25-degree wind blowing in, and there's just
Yeah.
tears running down my face the whole time. I'm like, this is so
Yeah.
like such a stupid, like things like that
Dude,
happen.
cattails.
Oh God.
So the 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 same year I fell on a tree. So we're gun hunting. I'm doing drives for people in through the swamp. On this hand here, or no, it's actually this hand here, right here, a cattail went and filleted me. So I'm
Mhm.
walking through the swamp. I'm like, man, someone shot a deer. There's blood everywhere. Here it is, me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I remember it's like, I take off, like, I get a turn. I mean, it is just pouring out of my hand. And I'm going, and we're like knee deep swamp. And I'm like, and like an idiot, like I put my hand in the water, like to wash it
Oh,
off. Lord knows. So I was like, that was a dumb idea. And I was like, I had to go get stitches on the top of my hand. And I'm like, from a cattail. How many cattails have I gone through?
dude.
Thousands of miles of cattails. Never, you get them in the eye, whatever. But I'm like, it cut me like a razor blade.
Yep.
It was like, what? I don't even understand this. And like, they're all laughing at me because I got this brace on my left leg. I go to the same hospital. I got my leg fixed on. And it's like, just some days it's just not you, man. Like some years you just catch the wrong end of, you know.
Dude,
I
we think about these environments that we're really used to. Like I'm in cattails all the time. Cattail swamps
mhm.
all the freaking time. And you think like, you always look at like Africa or some
Yeah,
other Australia, and you're like, that's so dangerous, like that ground, like, but we're just used to the ground we're in, right? And
yeah,
it's not the same kind of dangers, but like you talking about that. One of my really good buddies, he was pheasant hunting in South Dakota with his dogs, and he noticed his dog was sneezing and
yeah,
pawing at its face. So he walked up to it and he could see a little piece of cattail stem sticking out of his nose. And so he said
jeez.
he pulled it out and it was like 6 inches long. And he said the blood started shooting
Yeah,
out. And he said he ran back to his truck, threw that dog in the front of his truck, didn't crate him.
yeah,
And he said by the time he got to the emergency vet, it looked like he'd butchered a steer in the front of his truck.
yeah,
I
yep,
mean, just from a freaking
yep,
cattail.
yep. And it's like I had a cat who had a piece of grass stuck in his nasal cavity.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take it to the vet, and like they wanted to put it down because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So the one vet was like, went in there, and, like pulled out this. It was like an 8-inch piece of grass. It was just infected in there, and you're like, oh my god, this is horrible. And I was like, but it was just in there. Lord knows how long it was in there, and it's just got an infection. It
Right.
was down to his lungs and everything. But I'm like, a piece of grass, like a long bladed grass,
Yep.
almost killed my cat. You
Dude.
know?
Right. And it's stuff like that. I mean, I had a few years ago, I can't remember if I've ever talked about this on here, but I fell through the ice pheasant hunting in a cattail slough, and it was like 19 below
Yeah,
that morning. And I fell through the only time I've ever fallen through where I couldn't touch. You fall through in the
yeah,
cattails quite a bit,
yeah,
but you
yeah,
touch whatever you get out. I fell through that time, couldn't touch, and ended up kind of weaseling my way over to get a hold of the cattails next to me and pulled myself out.
yeah,
And as I was walking out, my dog got birdie right away. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, I'm going back to my truck, but if she flushes a rooster, I'm going to shoot it. And she flushed because I'm like, I got to go that way anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's brutal, brutal
yeah.
cold. And I'm walking out and Luna flushed a rooster in front of me. I pulled up and my gun was frozen from the barrel to the butt, dude. Like just a block of ice. It wasn't
Yeah.
going to work at all.
The-
But yeah, that's
like bird hunters. My uncles were big. They traveled the country bird hunting, grouse hunting, and they would go out to pheasant all out west there. And like we live in the coastal area, so it's duck hunters.
right.
Yeah, I've been duck hunting. Some duck hunters. There's some hardcore dudes. Like they will drag their canoe or boat across an ice field, just breaking through the whole time. Just go shoot some ducks. And it's like I've been duck hunting a few times, and it's like this is this could not end well for us because it's like you're out in the
Right.
middle of nowhere and the wind's just going, and you're like, we don't know. It's just like because it's a high tide, low tide here, and it's just ice. So you're walking on like you might be 3 feet from the water sometimes, So it's like it's just sketchy. Like I'm not a fan of duck hunting anymore. Like if I'm duck hunting, I'm like a fair weather duck hunter. Like, oh, you got a spot behind your house in a blind?
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
If it involves a boat? Nah, I'm good, man. Let's
It's going
just drive to the blind.
right. It's going to be 60 degrees and sunny, and we're going to shoot some wood
Yeah,
ducks in October.
that's
Sure.
right.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Goose
mean,
hunting, same thing. Like
right.
people that go goose hunting in that I don't even deer hunt when it's sub-zero anymore. Like it's just I don't enjoy it. I don't get a reward from it anymore. Maybe because I'm just old and it's cold. But
Dude,
if it's extreme cold, nah, I'm good.
I still will sometimes, but it never. I've never hunted a situation where, like people will be like, oh, if it's that cold, just go sit the food plot or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
gonna pour in there. It's always just been me freezing my ass off, not
Yeah.
seeing any deer or killing anything, or you
Yeah.
walk out, and when it gets that cold, the snow is like that squeaky,
Yeah.
crunchy,
Yeah.
just like right. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go out winter bow if I need some, like the last week, a couple food plots, and I'll sit on the ground and just shoot a doe. First doe comes out, I'm going to just shoot. And by the time they come out, like I'm just a frozen popsicle. And
Yep.
it's like I'm just pull. You got so many clothes on, you just pull them back. You're like, I'm not super accurate with it, so it's like 20 yards and under, and it's like shoot that deer. It's so cold, the deer will go like 40 yards, and it's like you get the arrow, and the blood's already like frozen on the arrow.
Yep.
You're like, it's cold, man. This is New Jersey, so it's like we don't get -19. Like we might get like 12, 13 degrees. So I couldn't imagine
Dude,
negatives with a wind chill like hunting.
it sucks. I mean, we had, I know we kind of veered way off course here, but
Yeah.
I went out a couple years ago with buddies of mine, and in Minnesota we can start at 9 o'clock in the morning for pheasants, 9 o'clock till sunset. So we're kind of at the truck, whatever, and it's cold. I mean, cold,
Yeah.
cold, below zero all day. But in those conditions, those birds are going to be in the best geothermal cover, which is usually the
Yeah.
cattails. Like they're
Yeah.
in preservation mode. So we go down, and there's a stream through this slough that we always cross and get into the thick stuff and get where a lot of people won't go.
Yeah.
We go to cross this stream, and one of my dogs, jumps up ahead of me and breaks through. So the ice cracks and my right foot goes in. No big deal. We get wet almost every time we pheasant hunt. So it's like whatever. But it was crazy cold, and I didn't think about it. So I started the day with a frozen boot. And by the time we got to by the time we got through those cattails and hunted and ended the day, which is, 8 hours later or whatever, 7.5 hours later, we go to the hotel, and I take off my boots, and you're just beat up from hunting all day. And I look at my toe, and it's like black.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit. And so I texted my wife, and she's like, I don't know, just like watch it. And dude, my toenail fell off. I mean, it was like, it wasn't like a bad injury, but it was just a straight pain in the ass for months.
Yeah.
Just because you mix water and super cold temperatures, and it's freaking dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, like the extreme cold, extreme heat. Like I hunted last year, and it was hot like the first week of season. I'm just like, I'm questioning what I'm doing out here, because it's like it's so hot. Like I'm having a hard time breathing. It's like get to the trees. Like I'm hunting in some pines, so it's like there's not a lot of cover. It's just like it's a far walk to get where I can go. I'm like I can't even breathe. I'm just going through all. Like I carry a lot of water. I got like a gallon of water in the early season. It's like I'm just chugging it. And I'm like I'm not gonna have any water left for the rest of the day. And it's like I get to the tree, climb up, and it's just like oil. I'm not even sweating. I'm like just it's like I'm leaking oil. All that work, I didn't see nothing. Like walking out, it's hot, so humid. Walking out, I was like, what am I even doing out here? It's like I should have been hunting water. Like I'm hunting,
Right.
like, oh, let's hunt. I'm gonna hunt this clear cut. Yeah, this clear cut that the state cleaned up. For what, man? It's that hot. You need beer water. It's like I need water. I would have felt better hunting near water, because I'm like I have one of those little emergency straws. I'm like I could have drank out of a mud puddle. It was so hot. It was like just demoralizing. Like, what am I even doing out here? Like, it's like antelope hunting and not seeing any antelope. It was brutal,
dude. I know that I'm probably in like the way minority here, but I love hot weather for whitetails. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's the same thing with the last elk I killed a couple years ago. It wasn't fun at all, but I'm hunting water holes, and it was hot. And I'm like, you just know something's coming in, and people aren't going to be out there. And that's like, if I had to draw up like a perfect scenario for public land hunting, it's going to be way like unseasonably hot, 80s, 90s, whatever. And I have a water pattern to work. That's my dream, dude. Cause I mean, it's like you said, it sucks. Like it's not fun, but when you're like positioned over a water hole and people aren't going to be out. because very few people are going to hunt that.
Yeah.
And you know those deer are going to come in. They're just going to come in. Like, I love that shit, man.
Yeah. If you got, like I said, some spots there's so many swamps, so I mean, like water can be tough in the early season
Right.
because there's just water everywhere. So it's
Right.
like, but if you get like to this water hole that's like, okay, there's a pond, an irrigation pond, there's some beans, some standing corn. If you can get in and out 3 days in a row, you're probably going to see a good buck because they have
Right.
to drink.
Right.
You know, it's just like, but you have to be there 3 days in a row. You're not going to get it. You're not going to have success. At least for me personally, it would take me 3 days of the same wind, you know, hunt that same water hole, and you're definitely going to kill for sure.
Yeah. And it's just, it's so simple,
Yeah.
but you have to get past the idea that you're going to be really uncomfortable. I mean, the one thing I will say on that is I have kind of, like you said about hunting really, really cold weather.
Yeah.
Like I'm not huge into being out there and free. If I'm going to go freeze my ass off, I want to shoot some pheasants. Like I don't want to sit in a tree stand anymore.
Yeah. You
but
move around.
right. But also that super hot stuff, I love hunting it. But if I'm in a situation where I'm like camping somewhere on the, like over the road, that is not that appealing to me anymore because I have spent a lot of time in tents that were like 80 degrees overnight.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. I bought a pop-up last year for the family, but I use it twice for hunting. It was nice. I'm like, put the little rooftop air conditioner on. I'm like, it doesn't. It makes it bearable. You're like, you can sleep, but you're like, okay, I can get down with this. You know, you're not going to freeze. You're still sweating, but it's like, all right, humidity's going a little bit, you know, and it's like, it's nice. Yeah, it's definitely nice having to pop up.
Dude, being able to sleep on those hunts, game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, you execute your plan so much better. You're not going to talk yourself into going home early.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. After you go through your injury, how like dedicated to tree stand safety do you get? Are you like pretty rigid, or are you still kind of like?
Well, sometimes I'll put a step up, and I'll catch myself thinking, it's like, you know, and I still like find myself, you know, like even with the linemen, I still wrap my leg around the tree and put it around the tree like I did without it. It's like, it's just like that third points of contact because the linemen's, it's not an end all be all. You'll still follow the linemen.
Right.
It's not, you're not girth hit. So it's like I still find myself using my leg, wrap around a tree, setting the next step, you know, but it's just to add a peace of mind, you know. And the one thing with the linemen's, a lot of people don't lean into linemen's, and that's where you're going to have your problems because they're designed for tension.
Right.
It's not going to stop you. If you don't have tension on it, you're going to fall and you're going to hit every stick and their screw step you put in on the way down.
Right. Right.
And it's super windy. I'll girth hitch my linemen's. I'll put a attachment to my bridge and I'll girth hitch it. You know, and if it's really windy or raining, I find myself girth hitching going up and down the tree.
Yep.
It's kind of a pain in the ass, but you know, outside of rappelling, it's probably the best thing you got going. You know.
Yep. Well, yeah, and I mean, you got the lifeline option too, which is something that I don't know. I'm pretty freaking religious about.
Yeah.
You know,
my daughter, she hunts. She shoots the bow a lot. She just turned 6. 10 years old, you can legally hunt in New Jersey, so she's working towards that. And I know I'll have to have those things for her lifelines, but I have her in the saddle. Like she's used to being up 6 feet in the air. Like she's used to understanding linemen's and like the tethers with the saddle getting up in there. So by the time she gets to hunting aids, like my dad, first morning we sat in the ground. First evening we hunted, sat in the ground. The next time he's like, "Oh, there's a tree stand over here. It's this wooden tree stand somebody made like back in the day, you know, because there was no portables. You know, you had a baker tree stand or a giant climber, or you build wooden stands."
Right.
I remember him just climb up there, just like, "Here, step on my and lift me up into this tree stand that don't know if it's safe or anything." He goes, "I'll be back later." And I was like, "Later? Like what?" I'm like 8-10 feet from the ground, but I remember sitting in these spots all day. And my dad worked shift work, so he probably went somewhere and fell asleep.
Right.
Waking up and come back and like, "Oh, see anything?" I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm afraid to get down." You should have got down. Dude, I'm like 8 feet off the ground. Like I got my bow, no haul line, like no nothing. But it's like times have changed, you know, like
dude.
My dad he would put like a climber up in a tree with limbs, just use the limbs to go up. He had this one tree called the sitting tree. It was just limbs all the way up. And you just sat on the limb. Always see deer there, but you couldn't shoot out with a bow because there's too many damn limbs. So you climb up there, you're like, you'll see deer, and you're like, well, I can't do anything. It's a gun tree, you know.
Good place to
You see
watch
all
them.
those deer? Yeah, basically, I was like, yeah, I had 30 come by, shoot one. How am I supposed to shoot this without falling to my death? You know, but it's like it's times have changed
Oh,
significantly with that. You know, and it's like I tell people, you've been around like the Baker tree stands. That's my first climber. That death trap that was. Like that was a
Widowmakers,
pure death
man.
trap. Yeah. God, I remember climbing up and just going, oh, I'm good. And just going all the way down. And you're like still holding a tree. Then you're like, what just happened? You don't even know. It's dark. It's noisy, but it's like what we have now is like, it's
Oh,
definitely a lot better.
dude, people, if you're just starting out now, you have no idea. I mean, we did all that shit. The Widowmaker freaking wooden tree stands have been up
Yep.
since the 40s. Like those original climbing stands. You know,
Oh,
we used to tie. I can remember like one of the first times I used one of them. You know, we tied a rope between the top and the bottom. Like, hey,
yeah.
it can't fall. But I had tied like a 6-foot rope between them, and I was like 15, you know. So
Yeah.
you get up there, and it's not, you know, now if you use a climber, which not very many people do, but there's a strap on each side,
Yeah.
so it falls level.
Yeah.
You haul that sumbitch back up to your feet. But back then, you're like, okay, now it's all cockeyed, hanging crooked, and it's 6 feet below me, and you're like, just dumb. You
Yeah.
know, like I mean, we got really lucky. You know what I mean? Obviously, you probably just weren't hearing about a lot of the
Yeah.
falls and stuff back
Yeah.
then. But the stuff that we have now is just, you know, if you're not using, you know, if you're saddle hunting, it's different, like you said, because
Yeah.
that whole system is just safe. Like it's just
Yeah.
if you know how to use it and you're comfortable with it, man, it's great.
Yeah.
But you also have the 6-point safety harnesses now.
Yeah.
And you know, people will say, like, I can remember for a long time, people are like, oh, it's going to get in the way of my bow shot, or I don't like a big bulky vest. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
you can get these things that are like 2
Yeah.
pounds, you know, under a jacket, whatever.
Yeah.
You got the lineman's belt, and you know, you've said this several times, and it's worth repeating. If you use one of those, the proper way to use it, if you're not comfortable with it, like, is to lean back. So that point of
Yeah.
contact there is the tension with you
Yeah.
leaning back and using it like you would on a saddle. And once you get comfortable with that, like, your hands free. It's like
Yeah.
it's a game changer. But if you're not comfortable with it, like, people who are too confident, like you were, get into trouble.
Yeah.
People who aren't confident enough,
Yeah.
they can get into trouble. And then you've got the lifeline situation. And man, you know, you get pretty conditioned. My daughters are older than yours, you know, but you get pretty conditioned to the entire process. Like, you're hooked up start to finish, anybody going with you. And that's one thing when you take camera guys with you
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
have
I can imagine.
no experience climbing trees, never been in a whitetail stand. You start thinking through that stuff because you're like, these guys have 50 pounds of shit on their back. They're going up in the dark in a place they've never seen. You know, sometimes, you know, I'm like 6'2", so I tend to default and put my sticks pretty far apart.
Yeah.
And you have to think, like, you can't do that. You know, you're not setting up for you anymore, but it really kind of is a crash course when you set up for somebody else and you're like, I don't want that person to fall. Kind of just teaches you, like, here's the process. Like, you don't get to say, like, I'm pretty comfortable and I do this or I do that. Like, it's like, I got to,
Well, one thing.
go ahead.
Sorry, I mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
One thing I do like with the full body harness, because we see it at work, people put it on incorrectly. It's
Right.
so loose that, like, I see it in the woods, I see it at work, and I'm like, you guys have no idea. Like, from a guy that falls, like, I had nothing. The ground stopped me, but I've been, you know, I've tested harnesses, I've jumped off tethers just to see how it feels. And like, if those crotch straps aren't tight, like
Yep.
if your balls isn't pushing through the center of that, like, you're gonna run into some problems with that. And I see it all. You see magazine pictures or like YouTube videos, whatever. It's like half people have it on wrong, and like I cringe because it's like you're probably doing more harm than good. Like, you actually might be better hitting the ground because
Mhm.
that, you know, you get those things pinched off. If you pinch off your nether regions there, like, you can die from that, you know,
Right.
like blood flow. Like, So just because you're wearing safety equipment doesn't necessarily mean you're safe if it's not installed correctly.
Right.
Like your lifelines. I see them all the time. The same dude will hunt this ladder stand with a lifeline. It's been out there 4 years and never leaves. You're like, dude, it's not saving you. Like that's just gonna break.
That's
Like it's 3 months, buy a new one every year. If you can't buy a new one every year, take it with you at the end of the season. I don't know. You can't leave them up year round.
well, that's what I was going to say when you were saying that. The other fella I tried to get on for this, he had the classic, left his tree stand up, stepped on and the platform gave out, trap door open. And that's something I still hear people say this all the time. Like, oh, I changed my ratchet straps. It's like, that's great. That's great. But you can tell a ratchet strap when it's wearing out, right? Like you look at it and people, oh, squirrels chew on it. I'm like, I've never seen it. I'm sure it happens, but
I've never seen it either.
Right. I never, but a tree gets real tight, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a thing that you should pay attention to. But what we saw for a long time that, some of the tree stand companies that used to be really popular don't exist anymore, or they've been reinvented to new, bought out new companies, whatever, is because there were failure points, like with the cables between the seat stem and the platform, where if you left them up longer than a season and that water got in there, you might rust out some metal component in there that you're never going to do a visual inspection and be like, there's the failure point. But you put 200 pounds on there and all of a sudden you find it.
Yeah. And it's a $50 stand. People are like, oh, I got 10 hang-ons. They're $40 stands. And it's like, I have a few of them, but I wouldn't hunt out of them all the time. There's just no way. I can afford $100, at least $100 stand. Like to spend the extra, you're going to get some better material, and don't leave it out year round.
Yeah, I mean,
that's I can't. I mean, because Jersey, there's a stands, ladder stands. It's galore. Like Delaware, they make you take your stands out.
Yep.
For the most part, and so it's kind of nice. States that make you remove stands at the end of the season. Jersey, it's just a free for all.
Yeah.
It's just stands everywhere, and you're like, and you see the old ones with their chains. Like my buddy, he hunts. All his permanent sets have chains. End the season, he'll loosen them up, let the stand hang, the tree grows, and then he'll reset them for the season. And because he don't like straps, and he's on a rotation every 2 years. The stand comes down, I put new cables on. Like he goes through a whole process, but he kills some good deer. But it's more of like a safety thing for him, peace of mind, which is most people don't do that.
Well, no, and I mean, there's a big misconception out there with a lot of people. And you see this in the in the gun hunting world a lot is I'm going to use a ladder stand, so I don't need a lifeline. I'll just clip in when I get up there. It's like, if you look at the statistics, man, their ladder stands are freaking dangerous. And it's because
you said the ankle ladder stands, how many broken ankle from the ladder stand?
Well, the thing that happens a lot, well, not a lot, but it's a component of tree stand fatalities and bad injuries. Is, like day 2 of rifle season, so you go to deer camp day 1, playing poker, drinking whiskey, whatever, the uncles are all there. Day 2, everybody's tired, a little hungover, and you fall asleep in that ladder stand and pitch out head first because it's real comfortable. And, like you don't think about that, or like a lot of people don't think about that stuff. But if you're not connected, like gravity doesn't care, man.
No, like gravity's undefeated.
No, and I mean, so much of this is just like in our head, like what we think is going to be okay, right? Like you think like, oh, I don't need to put my seatbelt on. I'm just driving down the road to the gas station. Well, you might be going 60 miles an hour in one section of that, or 30, 20, whatever. But I mean, I'll tell you a little story before we wrap this up here. I went down to Nebraska with a buddy of mine. I think it was 2014, and we went in rut hunt, people everywhere, went up on this ridge. I killed a giant the first morning. He shot an 8-pointer. And so we were like, it was day 1 and we had small game tags. So we're like, we're going to stick around, hunt rabbits, whatever, just like enjoy our time down there after we get these deer butchered. So, I have this great big 10-pointer hanging in camp and butchering it. Of course, people see it, right? Because there's people coming and going like crazy. And this guy came in and started talking to us who was bow hunting the same property. It's public.
Yeah.
And, we kind of buddied up with him like you do because you're camping there.
Yeah.
And, kind of make plans. All right, he's going back here. We won't go mess with him, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, start talking to this guy, and I see he doesn't have a safety harness on. And he's walking that property we were hunting is a section. So you can get a mile away essentially.
Yeah.
And where he's telling me he's hunting, I know this area. And I, especially back then, I'm like, you don't have cell phone reception back there because you're
Yeah.
way in the bottom of this valley. So I started talking to him about it. I was like, man, are you not using a harness? Is it in your pack? And he goes, I don't wear those, and he's like, man, and I fell out one time too. He said, I just went from being, sitting in my tree stand to waking up, cleaning the dirt and the leaves out of my mouth, just hit the ground. And we were done deer hunting. And, I was working for Bowhunter magazine then. And I was like, listen, dude, I'll give you my harness. I'll give you, the tether, the whole thing. I was like, if you'll use it, I'll leave it with you and you can have it. Like I have lots of them because he's a nice guy, whatever. So I left it, or I gave it to him. He's like, oh man, this is awesome. And so we had hunted rabbits for a few days, whatever. We're going home. And so we break down camp and his truck was parked in the parking area. And I whatever, I don't remember what I was doing, go throw away a bag of garbage in the campground or something. But I looked in his truck in the cab and that safety harness was just sitting on the seat and he was out hunting. And I was like, dude,
that scares, like, my dad's friend he worked with, he fell out of stand. And I was a kid, I was probably 10 or 12, died. His son found him, I think, or whatever. So you're like, that's just, I was always aware of that. Like my dad put it in my head, and then I killed this guy right here in the mountains, and we're dragging him down. My dad killed down. My buddy killed a buck, I think. Yeah. So we're talking. The ranger comes in, asks us what we're doing, sees our license and everything, and he's like, "You guys wearing your harness up there?" So like, yeah, we're good. He goes, because they found somebody that was up there for like a year. They found like a skeleton dude in the woods. They had to call, like, it was a whole, like, did he fall out? Like, so he gives us the whole story. I'm like, because it's remote,
Right.
50,000 acres. So it's like, you're not near a hiking trail. Nobody's going to go into this little spot where found a dude hanging from a stand. So it's like his foot got caught in it, I guess. He was wearing a harness and got caught in the cable, and he just hung upside down, probably screaming till he passed out. And I'm like, dude, that's just crazy because it's still 20. I mean, it was just 2018 or 19 or whatever it was. I'm like, then people still didn't. I mean, the literature's there. If you're hunting, you see it. And it's like people still don't use it. And I'm like, man, that's just nuts. And because really, like, I'm a victim of it, so I hear about that, and like you're telling me the story, it's like in the back of my mind, I'm like, that dude's an idiot because no cell phone service, like you're gonna die out there,
right? Because
you didn't want to be comfortable, or like you didn't want to wear it. Like that's just kids, wife, kids, family, job, business. It's just not worth it at all.
Well, and not to mention the fact that if you do fall, I mean, it's not like you're going to die right away.
Yeah.
Falling 17 feet. Like it's going to be you're going
slow, painful.
You're going to have a lot of time to think about it and the mistakes you made. Let's just wrap this thing up with, I just want to ask you one last question about your injuries. Like, do you still deal with repercussions from that fallout? Like, do you still deal with the injuries at some level today? For sure.
Every day I'm in pain, but you just deal with it. So
your
like,
knee?
Like no one, like no, like ailments, like I still run. I mean, I still, it's not going to stop me. I'm not going to stop living my life. But like my wife will always say, like, I don't complain about the pain because we were talking earlier, no one cares. And then when I do get to the point, like I'll snap sometimes because it's like I just need, like, I can't be bothered with anything right now, like because I do industrial maintenance, so it's like I beat my body up at work, and then it's like I do stuff to get ready for hunting season. It's like my body don't necessarily get a break sometimes, and I'll doing something around the house, like kneeling, and it just gets to the point where it's like I'm just irritable, and like she'll say something, and I'll just snap at her, and I feel bad. It's like if I'm snapping, it's like there's that. I have a high threshold of pain, but like I'm here. Like
Yeah.
I went from like a 10 to a 20. That's just, I don't need you to say that was not very nice. It's like I just need a little space. Just let me vent and move on. But there's never a day that I'm not in pain.
Right.
You know, you just learn to. If I complain about it every day, no one likes a whiner. No one likes a complainer. Like my daughter, she don't care about my pain. I got to pick her up. You know, even with this, it's like I'm like, pick me up, Daddy. All right, like no matter how hard I'm in pain, I got to do what Dad's got to do. Or at work, my knees were crawling on the, pulling in belt. My knees hurt. That belt needs to get in, and the belt's gonna be running before I leave. So you just buckle down and do it, and then just I'm gonna be in pain for a day or two, and then it subsides a little bit, and I just go about my merry way.
Right. I mean, that's a great way to end this, because you actually had, I mean, it's not like a favorable outcome, right? But it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
You can
My
walk.
surgeon was, my surgeon was, what he did was a miracle, basically. Because I see the X-rays before and what he did and what I'm able to do, and it's like, that dude deserves an award, because he didn't really have anything to work with. Like my meniscus was flipped upside down. The ACL was just stretched beyond belief, PCL, and it's like both meniscus just destroyed. They got K-wire, how he did it, K-wire and bolts and everything went through. And it's like, it's been a while now. And it's like, I don't get swelling or anything, it just hurts.
Yep.
So whatever he did was, I wish I knew where he was, because he closed up where he's not at the hospital anymore. Wherever he is, like wherever he went, thanks.
Dude,
he did all right.
There's probably there's probably just like some constant level of inflammation in there, huh?
No, it's not too bad.
But where's the pain? What's the pain coming from?
It's like aches.
Oh,
like it'll just ache. Like if we have that real extreme pressure change, like high pressure, low pressure, it drops real fast. Like I'll be like, "Hey, the rain's coming." My wife will. I was like, "It's coming. Trust me." Because both my knees will hurt, but the left one will be like, "Yeah, it's definitely coming." And I can look at for like where the underground or something. And you see that bed pressure rising down. And I'm like, "Oh, there it is." I was like, and my pain started at noon, and look at the rise. It's starting to go up like sharply, and it's like,
dude, you're like the wise old guy sitting in his backyard, like drinking iced tea. Like, yep, rain's coming, mama.
Yeah, we'll be at work, because I work at the airport, and some of the guys will be doing something. I was like, brought your rain jackets today? I was like, that rain's coming faster than they thought. Get out of here. Turn off 2:30. It's pouring, and I'm like, wow. It's like, told you. It's like the joys of falling out of a tree, I guess.
Dude, you got like a little superhero trait there for deer hunting, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So probably not worth it.
Yeah. Knee hurts, get in the woods.
Yeah, probably not worth it, but maybe there's a silver lining there. Dude, it's always so much fun to chat with you, hear your stories. This one is a very, very it's cautionary tale. Yes. People need to pay attention. Be safe out there, everybody. Greg, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks.
That's it for this week, folks. Make sure to tune in every week for some more whitetail goodness. I'm your guest host, Tony Peterson, and this has been the Wired to Hunt podcast, which is brought to you by First Light. If you want to check out that Whitetail EDU content, or you want to read some articles, maybe find a new recipe, listen to somebody else's podcast like Clay's Bear Grease podcast or the Element Boys, you can head over to themeateater.com and you will get your fill of content. And if you're feeling like treating yourself there, you can head to the MeatEater store and find all kinds of great gear to check out there as well.